What happens when one of Hollywood's most private stars stops dead in his tracks on a gritty Los Angeles street corner? Keanu Reeves had walked this path hundreds of times until a haunting melody forced him to listen. While paparazzi hunted for shots of the Matrix star at exclusive clubs and red carpets, Reeves was transfixed by a weathered guitar case and the broken dreams it contained. The young man playing wasn't just another street performer. He carried a secret that would shake the foundations of the music industry. The transformation that followed wasn't fueled by money, fame, or industry connections. It was powered by something far more precious. When Keanu finally revealed what he discovered that night, it sparked a movement that would change how we think about talent, opportunity, and second chances forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The streets of downtown Los Angeles have always held countless untold stories, but none quite as remarkable as the chance encounter that would forever alter the trajectories of two seemingly unconnected lives. What mysterious forces bring two souls together at precisely the right moment? How does destiny weave its intricate pattern in the bustling chaos of a city that never sleeps? On a crisp autumn evening in 2019, Keanu Chen, a renowned music producer known for his uncanny ability to spot raw talent, found himself taking an unusual detour from his regular route home. The decision to walk through the arts district instead of driving would prove to be more than just a whim. As he navigated the mural-adorned walls and artisan cafes, an ethereal melody caught his attention, floating through the evening air with an authenticity that made him stop in his tracks. The source of the music was a young man seated on a weathered wooden crate, his fingers dancing across the strings of a well-worn acoustic guitar. Daniel Martinez, a 23-year-old self-taught musician, had been performing on these streets for the past 3 years, earning barely enough to sustain his modest lifestyle. What set Daniel apart wasn't just his technical proficiency, but the raw emotion that poured through every note he played, telling stories of struggle, hope, and resilience without uttering a single word. Keanu observed from a distance, noting how passers-by would slow their pace, some stopping completely drawn into Daniel's musical sphere. The young musician's style defied conventional categorization, seamlessly blending elements of classical Spanish guitar with contemporary rhythms and unexpected melodic turns. What caught Keanu's professional ear was Daniel's intuitive understanding of musical tension and release, a skill that usually takes years of formal training to master. The producer approached Daniel after his impromptu performance, introducing himself with genuine interest rather than professional authority. Their conversation revealed Daniel's background, a first-generation American whose parents had immigrated from Mexico, carrying with them rich musical traditions that had shaped his earliest memories. Despite never having formal training, Daniel had absorbed these influences like a sponge, combining them with the diverse sounds of his urban environment. Keanu learned that Daniel worked various odd jobs during the day, dedicating his evenings to his true passion. The young musician's eyes lit up when discussing his creative process, explaining how he would often wake up with melodies in his head, rushing to record them on his phone before they faded away. This natural approach to composition particularly intrigued Keanu, who had grown weary of the overproduced formulaic music dominating the industry. The connection between them was immediate and genuine, transcending the typical artist-producer dynamic. Keanu recognized in Daniel not just talent, but a unique voice that needed to be heard. What struck him most was Daniel's humility. Despite his extraordinary gift, he spoke of music with the wonder of someone still discovering its mysteries, still learning and growing with each performance. Their conversation extended well into the evening, moving from technical discussions about music theory to shared experiences of cultural identity in the modern music industry. Keanu found himself increasingly convinced that he had stumbled upon something special. How often does one find an artist who possesses both technical skill and authentic emotional depth? The producer shared stories from his own journey in the music industry, offering insights into the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. Daniel listened intently, his excitement tempered by a healthy dose of skepticism, born from years of false starts and broken promises. Yet there was something different about this encounter, a mutual respect and understanding that transcended the typical power dynamics of the industry. As the streetlights flickered to life and the evening crowd thinned, Keanu made Daniel an unexpected proposition. Instead of immediately offering a contract or making grand promises, he invited Daniel to his studio for a casual jam session. This approach, focusing on the music rather than the business, resonated with Daniel's authentic nature. The young musician agreed, marking the beginning of what would become a transformative partnership. This fateful encounter raised questions that would echo throughout their future collaboration. How would Daniel's raw talent evolve under professional guidance? Could his authentic street performance style translate to the structured environment of a recording studio? What unique contribution could this unlikely pair make to the modern music landscape? The answers to these questions lay in the days ahead, but one thing was certain. Both men left that evening knowing they had experienced something significant. The streets of Los Angeles had once again proven their role as a catalyst for extraordinary connections, setting the stage for a musical journey that would challenge conventions and redefine success on their own terms. The weight of potential hung heavy in the air as Keanu reached into his car's trunk, retrieving a sleek guitar case that had remained untouched for months. The Gibson Les Paul inside represented more than just an instrument. It symbolized a turning point in both his and Daniel's lives. What makes a simple gift transform into a life-altering moment? Keanu had purchased the guitar during his more prosperous days as a music producer, intending it for a promising artist who ultimately chose a different path. The instrument's pristine condition reflected its unused status, making it the perfect catalyst for Daniel's budding talent. The deep cherry sunburst finish and gold hardware spoke of quality that far exceeded Daniel's worn acoustic guitar. Daniel's initial reaction to the gift transcended mere gratitude. His hands trembled as they traced the guitar's contours, his eyes widening at the realization that this professional-grade instrument was now his. The moment marked a profound shift in his perspective, from viewing music as a means of survival to recognizing it as a legitimate career path. The guitar came with strings attached, though not in the traditional sense. Keanu established clear expectations. Daniel would need to commit to regular practice sessions, attend music theory lessons, and maintain his academic studies. These conditions weren't meant as restrictions, but as stepping stones toward a structured musical education. How does one balance natural talent with formal training without diminishing the raw authenticity that made the music special in the first place? The gift sparked immediate changes in Daniel's approach to music. The superior sound quality of the Gibson allowed him to explore nuances in his playing that his old guitar couldn't produce. He spent hours experimenting with different techniques, discovering new sounds and pushing the boundaries of his abilities. The instrument became both his teacher and companion, guiding him through musical territories he hadn't dared to explore before. Keanu observed these developments with a producer's eye, noting how Daniel's confidence grew alongside his technical skills. The boy's natural talent, previously constrained by subpar equipment, now flourished with proper tools at his disposal. His fingerwork became more precise, his timing more refined, and his understanding of musical structure more sophisticated. The guitar also served as a bridge between Daniel's street performance background and formal musical training. While some might have expected him to abandon his street corner entirely, Daniel instead integrated his new knowledge into his public performances. The result was a unique blend of raw emotion and technical proficiency that drew even larger crowds than before. Financial implications of the gift extended beyond the instrument's monetary value. The improved sound quality led to increased donations during Daniel's street performances, providing him with more stability and reducing the pressure to play for extended hours. This change allowed him to focus more on developing his skills, rather than merely surviving. The Gibson became a symbol of possibility in Daniel's community. Other young musicians who frequented the same streets began to see him as living proof that talent could open doors. What happens when one person's opportunity becomes a beacon of hope for an entire community? Questions about responsibility and commitment arose as Daniel adjusted to his new circumstances. The guitar represented not just an instrument, but an investment in his future. He needed to prove himself worthy of such faith not only to Keanu but to himself. The pressure to succeed, while motivating, also introduced new challenges to his musical journey. Keanu's role evolved from mere benefactor to mentor, guiding Daniel through the technical aspects of caring for a professional instrument. He taught him about proper storage, maintenance, and the importance of keeping the guitar in optimal condition. These lessons extended beyond mere practical knowledge, instilling a sense of professionalism and responsibility. The guitar's promise manifested in unexpected ways. Daniel's improved musical capabilities led to opportunities to perform at small venues, moving beyond street corners to proper stages. These experiences exposed him to different audiences and musical styles, broadening his artistic horizons and professional network. As days turned into weeks, the initial excitement of the gift transformed into a steady determination. Daniel's practice sessions grew longer and more focused, his repertoire expanded, and his understanding of music deepened. The guitar had become more than just an instrument. It was a gateway to a future he had never dared to imagine before. The polished hallways of Starlight Records stood in stark contrast to the dimly lit bars where Daniel had spent the past decade, performing. His weathered guitar case containing Keanu's gift felt heavier with each step toward Sarah Thompson's office. As one of Los Angeles's most respected music producers, Sarah had discovered and launched numerous indie artists into mainstream success. But could she see potential in a 40-year-old musician whose prime years seemed to have slipped away? The meeting had been arranged through Keanu's industry connections, though Daniel questioned whether this opportunity arose from genuine interest or mere courtesy to a friend. The familiar whispers of self-doubt that had kept him tethered to small venues and cover songs began to surface. What could he possibly offer to an industry that celebrated youth and innovation? Sarah Thompson's reputation preceded her. Known for her brutal honesty and unwavering standards, she had rejected countless talented artists who didn't align with her vision. The pressure of this reality weighed heavily on Daniel as he waited, in her minimalist office, surrounded by platinum records that served as testament to her success. Would his original compositions, carefully crafted over years of late nights and early mornings, meet her exacting criteria? The initial exchange with Sarah proved surprisingly disarming. Rather than launching into business talk, she inquired about Daniel's musical journey, his influences, and the stories behind his songs. Her questions revealed a genuine interest in understanding the depth of his experience, rather than focusing on commercial viability alone. This approach, while comforting, also forced Daniel to confront aspects of his career he'd long avoided examining. When Sarah requested to hear his original material, Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he removed the guitar from its case. The instrument, still new enough to carry that distinct factory smell, represented more than just Keanu's generosity. It embodied the possibility of transformation. As he began playing Midnight in Echo Park, a song chronicling his years of performing in Los Angeles' underground music scene, Sarah's expression remained unreadable. The discussion that followed challenged Daniel's long-held assumptions about the music industry. Sarah spoke candidly about the changing landscape of music production, where age had become less relevant than authenticity in storytelling. She pointed out how Daniel's years of experience could actually serve as an advantage, providing depth to his songwriting that younger artists might struggle to achieve. But was the industry ready for such a perspective? Sarah's feedback on his compositions revealed both strengths and areas requiring development. While she praised the emotional honesty in his lyrics and the sophisticated chord progressions, she questioned whether his current sound could connect with contemporary audiences. The challenge, she explained, lay not in changing his essential style but in finding ways to make it resonate with modern listeners. This observation forced Daniel to consider how much he was willing to adapt his artistic vision. The producer's interest in his work sparked a complex mix of emotions. While validation from an industry professional offered a glimmer of hope, it also intensified the pressure to succeed. The possibility of failure now seemed more concrete. more devastating than when his dreams remained safely tucked away in late-night bar performances. Would pursuing this opportunity lead to fulfillment or merely add another chapter to his story of near misses? Sarah proposed a trial period. 3 months of intensive development working with her team to refine his sound and build a marketable portfolio. This offer represented everything Daniel had ever wanted, yet it also meant facing his greatest fears. Could he handle the scrutiny of professional production? Would his creativity survive the constraints of commercial expectations? The meeting concluded with Sarah sharing stories of other late-blooming artists who had found success through persistence and adaptability. These examples challenged the narrative Daniel had constructed about age and opportunity in the music industry. But they also raised questions about the price of such success, the compromises required, the comfort zones abandoned, the familiar patterns disrupted. As Daniel left Starlight Records, the Los Angeles sunshine seemed brighter, more intense. The city that had both nurtured and frustrated his musical ambitions for so many years suddenly felt different. Sarah's offer hung in the air like an unresolved chord progression, demanding resolution. Would he take this chance to rewrite his story, or would the weight of past disappointments keep him anchored to the safety of familiar stages? The walk back to his car became a journey through possibilities and doubts. Each step carried the weight of decision, not just about Sarah's offer, but about the kind of artist and person he wanted to be. The guitar case felt lighter now, as if sharing its burden with the countless other musicians who had walked this path before him. What would they have done in his position? More importantly, what would the version of himself he'd always hoped to become do with this opportunity? The journey from studio musician to solo performer often requires a catalyst, and for Daniel Chen, that moment arrived in the form of an intimate showcase at the Blue Note, a small jazz club nestled in the heart of the city. After months of session, work and collaborating with producer Sarah Martinez, the question remained: could he transition from supporting other artists to commanding center stage? The showcase represented more than just another performance. It marked Daniel's first solo appearance in nearly 2 years. The venue's capacity was limited to 50 guests, carefully selected industry professionals, fellow musicians, and close friends who had supported his musical journey. Among them sat his former mentor, James Wilson, whose presence added both comfort and complexity to the evening's significance. Sarah's decision to organize a private showcase rather than a large public concert proved instrumental in helping Daniel reconnect with his artistry. The controlled environment allowed him to focus on the music without the overwhelming pressure of a full-scale production. The intimate setting also created an atmosphere where genuine connections could form between performer and audience, something that had always been at the core of Daniel's musical philosophy. The evening's setlist reflected Daniel's evolution as an artist. Opening with an original composition titled Midnight Reflections, he incorporated elements of classical piano training with contemporary jazz influences. The piece served as a bridge between his past and present, demonstrating how his technical foundation could support creative expression rather than constrain it. What would the audience make of this fusion of styles that had taken months to perfect? Throughout the performance, Daniel discovered that the smaller venue magnified every nuance of his playing. Each note resonated with clarity, allowing listeners to experience the subtle interplay between melody and harmony. The intimate space created an unexpected advantage. He could observe individual reactions, gauge emotional responses, and adjust his performance accordingly. This real-time feedback loop helped him remain present and connected to the music. As the showcase progressed, Daniel introduced collaborative pieces developed with Sarah during their studio sessions. These arrangements showcased his versatility, while maintaining the authentic voice he had struggled to find. The question of whether he could balance artistic integrity with commercial appeal began to answer itself through the audience's engaged response. A pivotal moment occurred during the performance of Remember When, a composition inspired by his early days of playing in his family's living room. The piece started as a solo piano work but gradually incorporated other instruments, symbolizing his growth from isolated practice to collaborative artistry. How would this personal narrative translate to an audience that hadn't witnessed his journey? The showcase format allowed Daniel to share brief insights between pieces, creating context for his musical choices without disrupting the flow of the performance. These moments of vulnerability strengthened the connection with his audience, transforming what could have been a conventional recital into an immersive experience. The barriers between performer and listener began to dissolve, replacing his previous anxiety with a sense of shared discovery. Technical excellence merged with emotional authenticity as Daniel approached the finale. His fingers moved with renewed confidence across the keys, each phrase building upon the last to create a narrative that transcended individual notes. The performance space became a vessel for something larger than himself, a realization that his music could touch others without compromising his artistic vision. Sarah's presence in the audience provided silent encouragement, her months of guidance, culminating in this moment. The showcase represented not just a return to performance but a redefinition of success on his own terms. Could this intimate gathering serve as a template for future appearances that prioritized connection over spectacle? The evening concluded with an improvisational piece that incorporated themes from earlier works while pushing into new territory. This spontaneous creation demonstrated Daniel's growing comfort with uncertainty, allowing the music to evolve organically, rather than adhering to rigid structures. The audience's response suggested that authenticity could indeed resonate more powerfully than perfection. In the aftermath of the showcase, conversations with attendees revealed that the intimate format had allowed them to experience the music on a deeper level. Industry professionals noted the unique positioning of Daniel's artistic voice, while fellow musicians appreciated the technical nuances that might have been lost in a larger venue. How would these reactions influence his approach to future performances? The private showcase marked a turning point in Daniel's relationship with performance anxiety. By creating an environment where genuine connection took precedence over technical perfection, he rediscovered the joy that had drawn him to music initially. The question remained, could this renewed passion sustain itself beyond the protective cocoon of a private audience? The morning light filtered through the studio's soundproof windows as Daniel stood before the microphone, his fingers wrapped around the neck of his guitar. The weight of the moment pressed heavily upon him. This session would determine not only his professional future, but also the possibility of mending bridges with Ethan. How could a single recording carry such profound implications? The producer, Sarah Martinez, observed from behind the mixing console, her experienced eyes watching Daniel's every move. She had worked with countless artists throughout her career, but something about Daniel's situation struck a different chord. The industry veteran had witnessed too many talented musicians crumble under the pressure of expectations, yet Daniel's recent journey suggested a promising transformation. In the control room, Daniel's new management team waited alongside Sarah, their presence a reminder of the commercial stakes involved. The label had invested considerable resources in this session, booking one of the city's premier recording facilities for a full day. Unlike his previous recordings, where every note had been meticulously planned and processed, today's session aimed to capture the raw authenticity that had emerged during his private showcase. Daniel began with Midnight Echoes, the song that had sparked such a powerful response during his intimate performance. His fingers moved across the strings with newfound confidence, each note resonating with clarity and purpose. The technical precision remained, but now it served the emotion rather than overshadowing it. What had changed to bring about this evolution? In his playing. As the session progressed, Sarah made minimal adjustments to the mix, recognizing that Daniel's natural sound needed little enhancement. The organic approach marked a significant departure from his previous recordings, which had relied heavily on production techniques to achieve their polished sound. The stripped-down arrangement revealed nuances in his playing that had long been buried under layers of effects. Between takes, Daniel's thoughts drifted to Ethan. His former mentor's absence felt particularly acute in this moment of potential breakthrough. The last time they had spoken, harsh words had been exchanged, leaving wounds that still felt fresh. Would this new direction be enough to bridge the gap between them? Daniel had attempted to reach out several times since their falling out, but his messages remained unanswered. The recording session continued into the afternoon, with each take, building upon the previous one's energy. Daniel worked through his revised repertoire, including several new compositions that reflected his recent experiences. The song spoke of loss, redemption, and the courage to embrace authenticity, themes that resonated deeply with his personal journey. How had he never noticed before that his most powerful music emerged from genuine emotional connection? Sarah's occasional comments through the talkback system provided gentle guidance rather than rigid direction. She understood that Daniel needed space to explore this new territory, to find his voice without excessive intervention. The session's atmosphere remained focused but relaxed, allowing for spontaneity and natural expression. Could this be the environment he had been searching for all along? As the final notes of the last song faded away, a sense of accomplishment filled the studio. The day's recordings captured something special, a musician rediscovering his artistic core. The management team exchanged approving glances, recognizing that they had witnessed something beyond their commercial expectations. What would the industry make of this evolved sound? During the playback session, Daniel listened intently, hearing himself with fresh ears. The recordings revealed a musician who had found his center, who had learned to trust his instincts rather than chase perfection. The technical excellence remained, but it now served a greater purpose: emotional connection with the listener. After the session concluded, Daniel sat alone in the studio, his guitar still warm from use. He pulled out his phone and composed a message to Ethan, attaching a rough mix of one of the day's recordings. The message was simple, honest, and hopeful. "I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. Would you listen to this?" The studio session marked more than just another recording. It represented a crucial step in Daniel's artistic evolution. He had entered the studio as a musician seeking redemption and emerged as an artist who had found his truth. But would this transformation be enough to repair the broken relationship with his mentor? The answer lay in Ethan's response, which would determine whether this day of musical breakthrough could also lead to personal reconciliation. The sun had begun its descent as Daniel packed up his guitar, leaving the studio with a mixture of accomplishment and anticipation. The day's recordings would soon make their way into the world, but for now, his focus remained on the unread message sent to Ethan. Would his former mentor recognize the growth in his music? Could this new artistic direction serve as a bridge between their past and a possible future? The journey from studio to stage marked a pivotal transition in Daniel Morrison's career, but more importantly, in his relationship with his son Ethan. After the breakthrough recording session that had finally captured the raw emotion he'd been struggling to convey, Daniel faced his greatest challenge yet: performing these deeply personal songs in front of a live audience at the renowned Blue Note Jazz Club. The venue's historical significance wasn't lost on Daniel, who had performed there countless times during his prime. However, this performance carried different stakes. Among the familiar faces of jazz enthusiasts and critics sat Ethan, who had agreed to attend after their tentative reconciliation in the studio. What would his son make of these songs that laid bare their shared pain and Daniel's regrets? The set list began with Daniel's classic compositions, establishing a comfortable rapport with the audience while allowing him to find his groove. The real test came when he transitioned into the new material. The first notes of Father's Lament, the piece that had proved so challenging in the studio, resonated through the intimate space. The audience fell silent, sensing the weight of the moment. Daniel's fingers moved across the piano keys with newfound confidence, each note carrying the authenticity that had previously eluded him. The technical precision remained, but now it served the emotion rather than masking it. His playing spoke of missed birthdays, empty chairs at school events, and the hollow echo of opportunities lost to time. Throughout the performance, Daniel resisted the urge to search for Ethan's face in the crowd, maintaining his focus on the music while allowing the vulnerability in his playing to convey what words had failed to express. The new compositions revealed layers of their relationship: the pride, the disappointment, the love that persisted despite the distance between them. As the final piece drew to a close, the silence in the room held for several heartbeats before erupting into applause. Critics would later describe the performance as a masterclass in emotional authenticity, But Daniel's attention was fixed on a different kind of validation. Would this musical offering bridge the gap between father and son? The post-performance moments unfolded with their own rhythm. Well-wishers and industry professionals formed a queue to offer congratulations, but Daniel's focus remained divided. Had Ethan stayed? Had the music reached him? The answer came as the crowd thinned, revealing his son standing near the stage, hands in his pockets, expression thoughtful. Their conversation began hesitantly, both men carrying the weight of years of misunderstanding. Yet something had shifted. The music had created a new language between them, one that bypassed the defensive barriers built over decades. Ethan spoke first about the technical aspects of the performance, a safe territory for both musicians, before gradually moving into more personal territory. The discussion moved from the club to a nearby diner, where father and son found themselves sharing a meal for the first time in years. Their dialogue, punctuated by long pauses and careful considerations, revealed a mutual desire to understand. Ethan acknowledged the effort behind the new compositions, recognizing the courage it took to transform personal failings into art. Daniel, in turn, listened as his son shared his perspective on their shared history. This exchange marked the beginning of a new phase in their relationship, one built on honesty rather than expectations. The healing process wouldn't be instantaneous. Too much history existed for that, but the foundation for reconciliation had been laid. Music, which had once been a point of contention between them, now served as a bridge. The following weeks saw gradual but significant changes. Regular phone calls replaced lengthy silences. Musical collaborations were tentatively discussed. The professional respect they held for each other began to extend into the personal realm. Could their shared passion for music, which had once driven them apart, now become the force that brought them together? Industry response to Daniel's performance sparked interest in a potential album featuring the new material. However, his priorities had shifted. While the music remained important, the restoration of his relationship with Ethan took precedence. The success of the show had opened doors, but which ones would he choose to walk through? How would he balance his renewed career momentum with the delicate process of rebuilding trust with his son? The path forward remained uncertain, but for the first time in years, both father and son faced that uncertainty together. The music had done what words alone could not, creating a space for understanding and forgiveness. As Daniel began planning his next professional steps, he did so with a new perspective, one that recognized that his greatest composition wasn't played on a piano, but in the careful reconstruction of a relationship he had nearly lost. What shapes a person's life more profoundly than love and loss? For Daniel Morrison, these forces intertwined in the form of Maggie, whose presence and absence defined the trajectory of his existence far beyond their years together. The first time Daniel met Maggie Henderson, she was critiquing his performance at a small jazz club in Chicago. As a music journalist for the local paper, she had developed a reputation for her unflinching honesty and deep understanding of jazz. Her review of Daniel's show that night was particularly scathing, pointing out his technical proficiency while questioning his emotional authenticity. Rather than taking offense, Daniel sought her out, determined to understand her perspective. This confrontation sparked a dialogue that would evolve into a deep connection between two people who shared an uncompromising devotion to musical truth. Their courtship unfolded through late-night conversations about Miles Davis and John Coltrane, heated debates over the future of jazz, and quiet moments when words gave way to the universal language of music. Maggie's influence on Daniel's artistry became evident as his playing transformed from technically precise to emotionally resonant. She taught him to find the story behind every note, to understand that true jazz wasn't about perfection, but about honesty. The birth of their son James brought a new dimension to their shared passion. Maggie would hold infant James while Daniel practiced, explaining to the baby how his father was weaving stories through melody. She believed music was as essential as air, and their home became a sanctuary where art and life merged seamlessly. Even as her career flourished, with her articles gaining national recognition, Maggie remained Daniel's most trusted critic and strongest advocate. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to Our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But how does one prepare for the sudden silence that follows loss? Maggie's diagnosis came without warning. Aggressive cancer that moved with devastating speed. In the months that followed, Daniel watched as the vibrant woman who had taught him to truly feel music began to fade. Yet even in her final days, Maggie remained focused on the future she wouldn't see, making Daniel promise to never let James forget the power of music to heal and connect. The last piece Maggie heard Daniel play was an original composition he had written for her. As she listened, her eyes closed and a slight smile played across her lips, as if she could see the notes dancing in the air. The melody captured everything words couldn't express: their love story, their shared dreams, their impending farewell. When the final note faded, she squeezed his hand and whispered, "Now that's honest jazz." After Maggie's passing, Daniel struggled to reconcile his grief with his art. The piano, once a source of joy and expression, became a painful reminder of what he had lost. His attempts to play their favorite songs would end abruptly, the memories too raw to translate into music. This emotional paralysis extended to his relationship with James, who increasingly resembled his mother in his passionate approach to life and music. The recording studio where Maggie had first interviewed Daniel became a time capsule of their relationship. The owner, an old friend, had preserved their corner booth, where napkins filled with Maggie's handwritten notes still resided in a drawer. These fragments of her musical observations and critiques revealed the depth of her understanding, not just of jazz, but of how music could capture the human experience in all its complexity. What began as Daniel's inability to face these memories gradually transformed into a desperate need to preserve them. He started collecting everything connected to Maggie: her published articles, personal notebooks, photographs of her at countless jazz shows. Each item told a story of a woman who had changed not only his life, but the lives of countless musicians, through her insightful writing and unwavering support of authentic artistry. The evolution of Daniel's grief paralleled his journey as a musician. Initially, he retreated from both his personal pain and his professional calling. But as time passed, he began to understand that honoring Maggie's memory meant embracing the very vulnerability she had always encouraged in his music. The raw emotion he had once feared became the source of his most powerful performances. Through this process of remembrance and reconciliation, Daniel discovered that Maggie's influence hadn't diminished with her passing, it had merely transformed. Her principles about musical integrity, her belief in emotional authenticity, and her dedication to nurturing artistic truth lived on through both his playing and his relationship with James. The memory of Maggie became not just a source of pain, but a wellspring of inspiration, guiding Daniel back to the essence of what made his music meaningful. Could the deepest loss also be the greatest teacher? For Daniel Morrison, the answer lay in understanding that Maggie's greatest gift wasn't just the love they shared, but the lessons she imparted about the inseparable nature of life and art. In learning to embrace these memories rather than flee from them, Daniel found his way back to both his music and his son, carrying forward the legacy of a woman who taught him that true artistry requires not just skill, but the courage to be utterly, uncompromisingly honest. The evolution of Luis Martinez's perspective on the supernatural events unfolding in his coffee shop marked a pivotal shift in the investigation of Sarah Chen's disappearance. As the owner of the Daily Grind for 15 years, Luis had witnessed countless ordinary moments within its walls, but nothing had prepared him for the inexplicable occurrences that began after Sarah's last visit. Initially, Luis dismissed the strange incidents as coincidences or tricks of light and shadow. The flickering lights, which customers frequently reported, were attributed to aging electrical systems. The unexplained cold spots near Sarah's favorite table were blamed on drafts from the vintage windows. But how long could rational explanations suffice when the evidence mounted daily? The turning point came during a quiet Tuesday evening when Luis was closing up alone. The security cameras captured a coffee cup sliding across an empty table, the exact spot where Sarah had last sat. The footage showed no visible force moving the cup, no air current, no vibration from passing traffic. This incident forced Luis to question his steadfast skepticism. What other explanations had he dismissed too quickly? Luis began documenting every unusual occurrence in a leather-bound notebook, approaching the task with the same methodical precision he used for inventory management. Temperature readings, witness statements, and timestamps created a pattern that became increasingly difficult to ignore. The events seemed to cluster around specific times, particularly 3:47 p.m., the last time Sarah had checked her phone before vanishing. The relationship between Luis and Detective Chen evolved from reluctant cooperation to active participation in the investigation. Their weekly meetings, initially brief and formal, transformed into lengthy discussions about theories and possibilities. Luis shared security footage, customer statements, and his growing collection of documented anomalies. But what compelled this practical businessman to embrace such an unconventional investigation? Perhaps it was the memory of Sarah's last visit that haunted him most. She had ordered her usual, a medium caramel latte with an extra shot, but something had been different about her demeanor. The typically cheerful regular had seemed distracted, checking her phone repeatedly and glancing over her shoulder. Had Luis missed crucial signs that day? Could he have prevented whatever followed? The coffee shop's atmosphere began to change as Luis's perspective shifted. He installed additional security cameras, motion sensors, and temperature monitors. Regular customers noticed his increased attention to unusual occurrences, and soon, the daily grind became a hub for sharing experiences. How many others had witnessed something they couldn't explain but had been afraid to voice? Luis's transformation extended beyond his belief in the supernatural. He began connecting with other local business owners who reported similar incidents. A network formed, sharing information and supporting Detective Chen's investigation. The coffee shop owner who once rolled his eyes at ghost stories now hosted weekly meetings where witnesses could share their experiences without judgment. The impact on business proved unexpected. Rather than driving customers away, the shop's connection to Sarah's case drew people in. Some came hoping to experience something unusual, others to show support for the investigation. The daily grind evolved into more than a coffee shop. It became a community center for those touched by Sarah's disappearance. Luis's detailed records revealed patterns that might have otherwise gone unnoticed. The temperature drops always preceded electrical disturbances. Certain songs on the playlist would skip or stop at specific lyrics. Even the shop's cats, longtime residents who lounged in sunny windows, began behaving differently in particular areas. What were these animals sensing that humans couldn't perceive? The security footage became a valuable resource for Detective Chen's investigation. Hours of video revealed subtle anomalies, shadows moving against light sources, objects shifting slightly when no one was near, and brief glimpses of what appeared to be Sarah's reflection in windows and mirrors. Each piece of evidence strengthened Luis's resolve to continue his documentation. Professional skeptics and paranormal investigators began requesting access to the daily grind. Luis carefully screened each request, protective of both his business and the integrity of the investigation. He had transformed from a skeptic into a gatekeeper of supernatural evidence, but maintained his practical approach to documentation and verification. The coffee shop's role in the investigation raised complex questions about the nature of reality and perception. How many everyday occurrences might have supernatural explanations that go unnoticed? What other mysteries might be hiding in plain sight, dismissed by rational minds too quickly? Luis's journey from skeptic to believer challenged others to question their own assumptions about the possible and impossible. As the daily grind became central to the investigation, Luis found himself at the intersection of the ordinary and extraordinary. His transformation represented more than a change in beliefs. It demonstrated how extraordinary circumstances could reveal hidden depths in seemingly ordinary people. What other witnesses might step forward, inspired by his example, to share their own unexplained experiences? In the competitive landscape of television production, success often hinges on calculated risks and industry experience. Sarah Martinez, a veteran producer known for her sharp instincts and pragmatic approach to content creation, found herself at a crucial crossroads. The decision before her carried implications that extended far beyond the usual programming choices she managed daily at the network. Luis began documenting every unusual occurrence in a leather-bound notebook, approaching the task with the same methodical precision he used for inventory management. Temperature readings, witness statements, and timestamps created a pattern that became increasingly difficult to ignore. The events seemed to cluster around specific times, particularly 3:47 p.m., the last time Sarah had checked her phone before vanishing. The relationship between Luis and Detective Chen evolved from reluctant cooperation to active participation in the investigation. Their weekly meetings, initially brief and formal, transformed into lengthy discussions about theories and possibilities. Luis shared security footage, customer statements, and his growing collection of documented anomalies. But what compelled this practical businessman to embrace such an unconventional investigation? Perhaps it was the memory of Sarah's last visit that haunted him most. She had ordered her usual, a medium caramel latte with an extra shot, but something had been different about her demeanor. The typically cheerful regular had seemed distracted, checking her phone repeatedly and glancing over her shoulder. Had Luis missed crucial signs that day? Could he have prevented whatever followed? The coffee shop's atmosphere began to change as Luis's perspective shifted. He installed additional security cameras, motion sensors, and temperature monitors. Regular customers noticed his increased attention to unusual occurrences, and soon, the daily grind became a hub for sharing experiences. How many others had witnessed something they couldn't explain but had been afraid to voice? Luis's transformation extended beyond his belief in the supernatural. He began connecting with other local business owners who reported similar incidents. A network formed, sharing information and supporting Detective Chen's investigation. The coffee shop owner who once rolled his eyes at ghost stories now hosted weekly meetings where witnesses could share their experiences without judgment. The impact on business proved unexpected. Rather than driving customers away, the shop's connection to Sarah's case drew people in. Some came hoping to experience something unusual, others to show support for the investigation. The daily grind evolved into more than a coffee shop. It became a community center for those touched by Sarah's disappearance. Luis's detailed records revealed patterns that might have otherwise gone unnoticed. The temperature drops always preceded electrical disturbances. Certain songs on the playlist would skip or stop at specific lyrics. Even the shop's cats, longtime residents who lounged in sunny windows, began behaving differently in particular areas. What were these animals sensing that humans couldn't perceive? The security footage became a valuable resource for Detective Chen's investigation. Hours of video revealed subtle anomalies, shadows moving against light sources, objects shifting slightly when no one was near, and brief glimpses of what appeared to be Sarah's reflection in windows and mirrors. Each piece of evidence strengthened Luis's resolve to continue his documentation. Professional skeptics and paranormal investigators began requesting access to the daily grind. Luis carefully screened each request, protective of both his business and the integrity of the investigation. He had transformed from a skeptic into a gatekeeper of supernatural evidence, but maintained his practical approach to documentation and verification. The coffee shop's role in the investigation raised complex questions about the nature of reality and perception. How many everyday occurrences might have supernatural explanations that go unnoticed? What other mysteries might be hiding in plain sight, dismissed by rational minds too quickly? Luis's journey from skeptic to believer challenged others to question their own assumptions about the possible and impossible. As the daily grind became central to the investigation, Luis found himself at the intersection of the ordinary and extraordinary. His transformation represented more than a change in beliefs. It demonstrated how extraordinary circumstances could reveal hidden depths in seemingly ordinary people. What other witnesses might step forward, inspired by his example, to share their own unexplained experiences? In the competitive landscape of television production, success often hinges on calculated risks and industry experience. Sarah Martinez, a veteran producer known for her sharp instincts and pragmatic approach to content creation, found herself at a crucial crossroads. The decision before her carried implications that extended far beyond the usual programming choices she managed daily at the network. The weight of the decision pressed on Sarah as she considered the potential consequences. Approving the show would mean staking her professional reputation on an unproven concept. Rejecting it might mean missing an opportunity to contribute something meaningful to both the television landscape and society at large. Which path would prove the wiser choice in the long run? Behind every act of kindness lies a deeper motivation, and Keanu Reeves's decision to champion Daniel's script emerged from a complex web of personal experiences and professional insights. What drives an established actor to take such a keen interest in an unknown writer's work? The answer traced back to Keanu's own journey in Hollywood, where he had encountered numerous gatekeepers and skeptics early in his career. Despite his eventual success, those memories of struggle remained vivid, shaping his perspective on the industry's often rigid hierarchies. His involvement with Daniel's script represented more than mere professional interest. It embodied his long-held belief in dismantling barriers that prevented fresh voices from being heard. Throughout his career, Keanu had quietly supported numerous emerging artists, though few knew about these endeavors. He operated with a philosophy that talent deserved recognition regardless of its source, and his position in the industry afforded him the ability to open doors that might otherwise remain closed. This approach stemmed from his own experiences with mentors who had taken chances on him when he was an aspiring actor in Toronto. The script's themes of redemption and second chances resonated deeply with Keanu's personal philosophy. Having experienced both triumph and tragedy in his life, he recognized the universal nature of seeking renewal and the power of storytelling to convey these fundamental human experiences. The protagonist's journey in Daniel's script paralleled many of the roles Keanu had chosen throughout his career, characters facing moral dilemmas and seeking redemption. Keanu's involvement extended beyond mere advocacy. He had spent considerable time analyzing the script's nuances, identifying elements that aligned with current market demands while maintaining its artistic integrity. His years of experience in the industry had given him a keen sense of what audiences connected with, and he saw in Daniel's work a rare combination of commercial appeal and authentic storytelling. The actor's reputation for integrity in Hollywood played a crucial role in his ability to champion Daniel's cause. Unlike many in the industry who wielded influence primarily for personal gain, Keanu had consistently demonstrated a commitment to projects he genuinely believed in. This track record lent significant weight to his endorsement of Daniel's script, making industry executives more inclined to give it serious consideration. What set this particular involvement apart from Keanu's other supportive endeavors? The answer lay in the timing and circumstances surrounding the script's arrival. The industry was experiencing a shift toward more diverse storytelling voices, and Keanu recognized that Daniel's perspective offered something unique in this changing landscape. The script's themes aligned perfectly with this movement while maintaining universal appeal. His approach to supporting Daniel remained characteristically understated but strategic. Rather than simply using his name to open doors, Keanu focused on creating opportunities for the script to be evaluated on its own merits. He understood that sustainable success in the industry required more than celebrity endorsement. It needed genuine recognition of talent and potential. The relationship between Keanu and Daniel evolved beyond the typical mentor-mentee dynamic. Through their discussions about the script, Keanu found himself reconnecting with the pure enthusiasm for storytelling that had drawn him to acting initially. Daniel's fresh perspective and unwavering dedication to his craft served as a reminder of the industry's potential to nurture new talent and ideas. Keanu's mission extended beyond simply helping one writer achieve success. He viewed this as an opportunity to demonstrate how established industry figures could actively participate in fostering new talent. His actions set an example for other influential individuals in Hollywood, suggesting a model for how the industry could become more inclusive and supportive of emerging voices. The process of championing Daniel's script also allowed Keanu to challenge his own assumptions about storytelling and creativity. How could the industry better identify and nurture talented outsiders? What responsibility did successful artists have in supporting the next generation? These questions drove his commitment to seeing Daniel's project through to completion. As the campaign to get Daniel's script produced gained momentum, Keanu's role became increasingly crucial. His understanding of both the creative and business Aspects of filmmaking allowed him to navigate the complex network of industry relationships effectively, yet his primary focus remained on ensuring that Daniel's unique voice and vision remained intact throughout the development process. Life in Los Angeles presented a stark contrast between glittering opportunities and harsh realities, particularly for those living on its unforgiving streets. Before Keanu Reeves crossed paths with Daniel, the young man's existence epitomized the darker side of the City of Angels, where dreams often collided with the brutal truth of survival. Daniel's journey to homelessness began gradually, following a series of unfortunate events that stripped away his safety nets one by one. Born into a middle-class family in suburban LA, his early life showed promise until his parents' divorce created the first crack in his foundation. The subsequent economic hardship forced his mother to work multiple jobs, leaving Daniel increasingly alone during his formative teenage years. Without proper guidance and structure, he began struggling academically and emotionally, setting in motion a downward spiral that would eventually lead him to the streets. What makes someone like Daniel end up homeless in one of the world's wealthiest cities? The answer lies in the complex interplay of personal circumstances, systemic failures, and societal indifference. By his senior year of high school, Daniel had dropped out, convinced that traditional education held no future for him. His mother's deteriorating health and mounting medical bills created additional pressure, pushing him to seek quick solutions through increasingly risky choices. The streets of LA became Daniel's education ground, teaching him lessons no classroom ever could. He learned to distinguish between those who might offer genuine help and those who would exploit his vulnerability. The daily challenge of finding food and safe places to sleep sharpened his survival instincts, while the constant exposure to danger and desperation hardened his exterior. Yet beneath this tough facade, Daniel maintained a spark of hope that set him apart from many others in similar situations. Los Angeles's homeless population faces unique challenges that often go unnoticed by the millions who call the city home. The temperate climate that attracts so many to Southern California also makes it possible to survive year-round on the streets, creating a false sense of sustainability in an otherwise unsustainable situation. Daniel, like many others, found himself trapped in this paradox, surviving but not living, present but invisible to most passers-by. The geography of homelessness in LA shaped Daniel's daily routine. He learned which neighborhoods were safer, which public spaces offered temporary refuge, and which areas to avoid after dark. The Venice Beach area became his primary territory, where the eclectic mix of tourists, locals, and other homeless individuals provided both opportunities and challenges. How does someone maintain their dignity while living in plain sight of luxury and abundance? Before Keanu's intervention, Daniel's days followed a predictable pattern of seeking basic necessities while trying to avoid trouble. He developed a network of sorts among other homeless individuals, participating in an informal economy of favors and shared resources. These connections, while helpful for immediate survival, often reinforced the cycle of homelessness by creating a sense of community within the margins of society. The mental toll of street life manifested in various ways for Daniel. Constant vigilance against theft and violence led to chronic stress and sleep deprivation. The shame of his situation made him increasingly reluctant to seek help from traditional support services or reach out to former friends and acquaintances. How many others like Daniel carry the weight of their circumstances in silence, their potential locked away behind barriers of circumstance and society's preconceptions? Los Angeles's social services system, though well-intentioned, often proved inadequate for addressing the complex needs of individuals like Daniel. The bureaucratic maze of requirements, waiting lists, and temporary solutions failed to provide the comprehensive support needed for sustainable change. This systemic failure contributed to the persistence of homelessness, even among those actively seeking to improve their situations. The entertainment industry's presence in LA added another layer of complexity to Daniel's experience. Living in the shadow of Hollywood's dream factory, he witnessed daily reminders of success and excess while struggling to meet basic needs. This contrast between aspiration and reality reflected the broader inequalities that contribute to homelessness in major urban centers. Daniel's story raises important questions about society's response to homelessness. What responsibility do individuals and communities bear in addressing this crisis? How can cities like Los Angeles better serve their most vulnerable populations? The intersection of personal circumstances, societal factors, and systemic challenges in Daniel's pre-Keanu life illustrates the multifaceted nature of homelessness and the need for comprehensive solutions. The streets of LA shaped Daniel in ways that would later influence his response to Keanu's help. His experiences fostered resilience and resourcefulness, while also creating barriers to trust and acceptance of assistance. Understanding this background becomes crucial for appreciating the significance of Keanu's intervention and its potential to catalyze meaningful change in Daniel's life. The weight of past achievements often bears heaviest when contrasted with present circumstances. For Daniel, this reality manifested in the quiet moments between auditions and acting classes, where memories of his former success lingered like persistent shadows. His career had once shown remarkable promise, with early roles in independent films garnering critical acclaim and attention from industry insiders. In the mid-2000s, Daniel had secured a breakthrough role in a critically acclaimed drama, playing a complex character that demonstrated his range and emotional depth. The performance earned him nominations at several film festivals and opened doors to more substantial opportunities. Industry publications had labeled him as one to watch, and casting directors actively sought his involvement in their projects. What makes success so fleeting in an industry built on perpetual reinvention? The trajectory of his career followed an upward path for several years, with supporting roles in major studio productions and lead roles in independent features. Daniel's ability to inhabit diverse characters earned him respect among his peers and established him as a reliable talent in Hollywood's competitive landscape. His agent's phone rang consistently with offers, and he enjoyed the luxury of selecting projects that aligned with his artistic vision. Financial stability accompanied his professional success, allowing Daniel to purchase his first home in Los Angeles and invest in his craft through advanced acting workshops and coaching sessions. He developed valuable relationships within the industry, forming connections with directors, producers, and fellow actors who recognized his dedication and skill. These networks seemed unshakable at the time, built on mutual respect and shared artistic ambitions. The turning point arrived gradually, almost imperceptibly at first. The quality of roles began to diminish, with offers becoming less frequent and less compelling. Industry dynamics shifted, and newer faces emerged in the roles he once would have been considered for. How does an actor maintain relevance in an environment that constantly seeks the next fresh talent? Daniel's response to these changes proved crucial but ultimately insufficient. He increased his efforts, attending more auditions and accepting smaller roles to maintain visibility. However, the momentum of his earlier success had begun to wane. The industry's memory proved shorter than anticipated, and previous achievements carried diminishing weight in securing new opportunities. The financial impact of his career decline forced difficult decisions. The comfortable lifestyle he had built began to erode, leading to the eventual sale of his home and a series of increasingly modest living arrangements. The contrast between his past success and current circumstances created a psychological burden that affected his performances and personal relationships. Professional relationships that once seemed solid began to cool. Calls went unreturned, and invitations to industry events became rare. The network he had carefully cultivated over years of success thinned out, leaving him increasingly isolated in an industry built on connections. What role does loyalty play in an environment driven by commercial success? The acting workshops and classes that once served as opportunities for growth transformed into necessary venues for maintaining basic skills and industry presence. Daniel found himself sharing space with aspiring actors who knew nothing of his previous success, their fresh enthusiasm serving as both inspiration and painful reminder of his own journey. His agent, once enthusiastic and proactive, began suggesting alternative career paths within the industry. The conversations shifted from discussing potential leading roles to the possibility of teaching acting or working in production. These well-intentioned suggestions carried the implicit acknowledgement that his time as a prominent actor might have passed. Social media and digital platforms emerged as new challenges, requiring skills and self-promotion techniques that felt foreign to Daniel's traditional approach to acting. The industry's evolution demanded adaptation, but the rapid pace of change left many established actors struggling to maintain relevance. How does one navigate an artistic profession that increasingly demands digital savvy? The memories of past success created a complex relationship with his current reality. Each new audition carried the weight of comparison to his previous achievements, affecting his performance and confidence. The industry's tendency to categorize actors based on their most recent work, rather than their full body of experience, presented an ongoing challenge to professional reinvention. Yet within these challenges lay the potential for transformation. The intervention of Keanu Reeves would present an unexpected opportunity to reconcile past success with present circumstances, offering a new perspective on the cyclical nature of entertainment industry careers. The question remained, how would Daniel's experience of both success and failure influence his approach to this unexpected chance at redemption? The weight of rejection settled heavily on Daniel Chen as he stared at the email from the Fifth Publishing house that had declined his manuscript. Each carefully worded rejection seemed to pierce deeper than the last, their polite phrases doing little to soften the impact of their collective no. How many more closed doors would he have to face before finding an open one? The publishing landscape had changed dramatically since his last successful novel 15 years ago. Digital platforms dominated the market, algorithms dictated reader preferences, and the traditional gatekeepers seemed more risk-averse than ever. The industry that had once embraced Daniel's fresh perspective now viewed him as an uncertain investment, a former success story whose time had perhaps passed. Daniel's writing room, once a sanctuary of creativity, began to feel more like a prison of self-doubt. The walls, lined with his previous works and literary awards, now seemed to mock his current struggles. Each glance at his old book covers served as a reminder of what he had been, and what he was failing to become again. What had changed more, the industry or himself? The financial pressure mounted with each passing week. His savings, carefully managed over the years, had dwindled significantly during his intensive writing period. The advance from his previous publisher had long since been exhausted, and the freelance editing work he'd taken on barely covered his basic expenses. The practical reality of his situation began to overshadow his artistic aspirations. His sister Michelle's words from their last conversation echoed in his mind. Maybe it's time to consider a different path. She had meant well, suggesting he leverage his experience in publishing to pursue a career in editing or teaching creative writing. But the thought of abandoning his storytelling dreams felt like admitting defeat. Could he really walk away from the one thing that had defined his entire adult life? The isolation of the writing process, once a necessary condition for his creativity, now felt suffocating. His social circle had shrunk considerably as he'd thrown himself into the manuscript, and the few remaining friends seemed distant, their lives moving forward while his remained suspended in uncertainty. Even his weekly calls with Michelle had become shorter, filled with awkward silences and unspoken concerns. Daniel found himself questioning every decision that had led to this point. The choice to leave his teaching position, the months spent crafting and refining his manuscript, the stubborn belief that he could recapture the success of his earlier work. Had it all been an exercise in futility? The creative fire that had driven him to write through countless nights now felt like a fading ember. The manuscript itself, once a source of pride, began to appear flawed in ways he hadn't previously recognized. Each page seemed to reveal new weaknesses, plot holes he'd overlooked, character arcs that felt incomplete. The story he'd believed would mark his triumphant return to publishing now read like a pale imitation of his previous work. What if the rejections weren't just about market conditions or timing, but about the quality of his writing itself? His daily routine, once structured around writing sessions and revision periods, began to unravel. Hours that should have been spent sending out more query letters or researching alternative publishing options were instead lost to paralyzing self-doubt. The disciplined approach that had served him throughout his career started to crack under the pressure of repeated rejection. The breaking point arrived unexpectedly during a routine morning coffee run. The barista, a young woman who had often engaged him in conversations about books, asked about his progress. Her simple question, "How's the new book coming along?" triggered an overwhelming wave of emotion. Standing there, coffee growing, cold in his hands, Daniel faced the possibility that his literary comeback might remain forever unrealized. The walk home from the coffee shop became a journey of brutal self-examination. Each step forced him to confront uncomfortable questions about his identity, his purpose, and his future. Without writing, who was he? Without another published book, what would justify the years he'd invested in this pursuit? The streets of his neighborhood, usually a source of inspiration for his writing, now felt like pathways leading nowhere. Back in his apartment, Daniel sat at his desk, finger hovering over the delete key, contemplating erasing the manuscript that represented countless hours of work and hope. Would clearing his computer of this failed attempt allow him to move forward, or would it mark the final surrender of his literary ambitions? The cursor blinked steadily on the screen, waiting for a decision that would determine not just the fate of his manuscript, but potentially the direction of his remaining years. In the aftermath of Daniel's near breaking point, the dynamic between mentor and protege began to shift in unexpected ways. What started as a strictly professional relationship between Keanu Reeves and Daniel Thompson evolved into something more meaningful, built on shared experiences and mutual understanding. The transformation began during their early morning training sessions, where Keanu noticed Daniel's renewed determination following his moment of doubt. Rather than maintaining the formal distance typical of mentor-student relationships, Keanu began sharing personal anecdotes from his own journey in Hollywood. He spoke of his early struggles, the rejections he faced, and the moments when he too had contemplated giving up. These conversations, often occurring during breaks between scenes, created a foundation of authenticity that resonated deeply with Daniel. Daniel's perspective on his mentor changed significantly during this period. The intimidating figure of Keanu Reeves, the Hollywood icon, gradually gave way to Keanu the person, someone who had walked a similar path and understood the weight of self-doubt. This realization helped Daniel process his own recent emotional turmoil, transforming it from a source of shame into a catalyst for growth. Their training sessions evolved beyond mere technical instruction. While maintaining professional standards, Keanu incorporated more collaborative elements, encouraging Daniel to contribute his own ideas and interpretations. This approach not only boosted Daniel's confidence, but also demonstrated Keanu's trust in his students' creative instincts. How often does a mentor's faith become the turning point in a student's journey? The impact of this deepening relationship manifested in tangible ways. Daniel's performance in training scenarios showed marked improvement, not just in technical execution but in emotional depth. He began to understand that authentic performance stemmed from genuine human connection, something Keanu had been modeling all along. Outside of formal training, their interactions took on a more natural rhythm. Conversations expanded beyond the scope of acting, touching on philosophy, life experiences, and shared interests. Keanu's willingness to engage on this level created an environment where Daniel felt increasingly comfortable being vulnerable and honest about his aspirations and fears. This evolution in their relationship caught the attention of others on set. Crew members noticed the subtle changes in their dynamic, the easy laughter during breaks, the focused discussions between takes, the mutual respect evident in their interactions. What had started as a standard mentorship was developing into a partnership of sorts, each bringing their unique perspective to their shared work. The transformation affected their professional collaboration as well. During scene preparations, Daniel found himself more willing to take creative risks, knowing he had Keanu's support. Their discussions about character motivation and scene interpretation became more nuanced and productive, with both parties contributing valuable insights. Keanu's approach to mentorship revealed itself to be multifaceted. Beyond teaching technical skills, He demonstrated the importance of maintaining authenticity in an industry often criticized for its superficiality. His actions showed Daniel that success in Hollywood didn't require compromising one's values or losing touch with one's true self. The evolution of their relationship also highlighted the cyclical nature of mentorship in the entertainment industry. Keanu often referenced his own mentors and the impact they had on his career, emphasizing the importance of passing on knowledge and support to the next generation. This perspective helped Daniel understand his current position as part of a larger continuum of artistic growth and development. As their trust deepened, Keanu began sharing more specific insights about navigating the entertainment industry. These weren't just technical tips about acting, but included practical advice about handling pressure, maintaining work-life balance, and staying grounded amid success. Such guidance proved invaluable for Daniel, who was still learning to navigate the complexities of Hollywood. The strengthening of their relationship created a more productive working environment. Their scenes together gained new dimensions of authenticity, their characters' interactions benefiting from the real trust and understanding that had developed between them. This organic evolution demonstrated how genuine human connection could enhance professional collaboration. Through this period of growing trust, both Keanu and Daniel discovered new aspects of their craft and themselves. Their relationship exemplified how mentorship, when approached with openness and authenticity, could transcend its formal boundaries to become a catalyst for mutual growth and understanding. What began as a professional arrangement had evolved into a meaningful connection that would influence both their careers and personal development. The music industry's gleaming facade often masks a complex web of harsh realities, a truth Sarah Henderson knew all too well. As a veteran producer with decades of experience, she had witnessed countless talented artists fall prey to the industry's darker mechanisms. Her decision to share these insights with Keanu and Daniel stemmed from a protective instinct, recognizing their genuine talent and wanting to preserve their artistic integrity. During an unexpected late-night studio session, Sarah began unraveling the intricate tapestry of industry politics that typically remained hidden from emerging artists. She explained how major labels often employed predatory contracts designed to bind artists into long-term agreements that primarily benefited the corporation. These contracts frequently included clauses that gave labels ownership of the artists, master recordings, control over their creative direction, and significant portions of their touring revenue. The conversation shifted to the concept of artistic authenticity versus commercial viability. Sarah detailed how many promising musicians found themselves gradually molded into marketable products, their original vision diluted through a series of seemingly minor compromises. The industry's emphasis on immediate commercial success often forced artists to abandon their unique sound in favor of trending formulas, creating a cycle of homogenized music that prioritized profit over artistic expression. Digital streaming platforms, while democratizing music distribution, had introduced their own set of challenges. Sarah revealed how algorithms and playlist placements could make or break an artist's career, leading to a system where musicians often crafted songs specifically to appeal to streaming metrics rather than artistic merit. The pressure to maintain consistent releases and social media presence had transformed artists into content creators, sometimes at the expense of their mental health and creative development. The role of image manipulation emerged as another crucial topic. Sarah described how labels invested heavily in creating and maintaining specific personas for their artists, often requiring them to suppress aspects of their authentic selves. This manufactured authenticity, paradoxically, had become a cornerstone of modern music marketing, raising questions about the relationship between commercial success and genuine artistic expression. Financial exploitation remained a persistent issue in the industry. Sarah outlined various mechanisms through which artists could appear successful while actually accumulating substantial debt through recording costs, marketing expenses, and tour support. The complex accounting practices employed by major labels often resulted in artists receiving minimal returns despite generating significant revenue for their labels. The conversation turned to the psychological impact of sudden fame and industry pressure. Sarah shared examples of artists who struggled with mental health issues due to relentless touring schedules, constant public scrutiny, and the disconnect between their public image and private reality. The industry's tendency to view artists as products rather than individuals had created an environment where burnout and creative exhaustion became increasingly common. Sarah emphasized the importance of building a strong support system and maintaining creative control. She advised Keanu and Daniel about the value of legal representation, particularly entertainment lawyers who could protect their interests during contract negotiations. Understanding the business aspects of music became as crucial as artistic development in navigating the industry successfully. The discussion expanded to include the role of social media and public relations in modern music careers. Sarah explained how the constant demand for content and engagement had created new pressures for artists, who now needed to maintain multiple personas across various platforms while still focusing on their musical output. The line between authentic connection and strategic marketing had become increasingly blurred. Technology's impact on music production raised additional concerns. Sarah detailed how the industry's push for perfect, polished recordings sometimes stripped songs of their emotional authenticity. The standardization of production techniques while ensuring commercial viability often resulted in the loss of unique sonic characteristics that made artists distinctive. The conversation concluded with Sarah addressing the future of the industry. She noted how emerging technologies and changing consumption patterns were creating new opportunities alongside new challenges. Independent artists had more tools available to maintain creative control, but they also faced increased competition in an oversaturated market. Through this frank discussion, Sarah provided Keanu and Daniel with crucial insights that would help them navigate their growing success while maintaining their artistic integrity. The knowledge she shared represented not just warnings about potential pitfalls, but also strategies for maintaining authenticity in an industry that often prioritized commercialization over creativity. How would this newfound understanding influence their approach to their music career? Could they find a balance between commercial success and artistic authenticity? The complex relationship between fathers and sons often carries weight that spans generations, and for Ethan, this burden had become increasingly heavy since his father's departure. While most children grow up with memories of playing catch or sharing weekend adventures, Ethan's recollections of his father existed primarily in the empty spaces where those moments should have been. What does abandonment truly mean to a child who never fully understood why their parent left? For Ethan, this question had lingered in the background of every major life event, every achievement, and every setback. His father's absence had created a peculiar paradox. He was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, defining Ethan's life through his very lack of presence. The initial years following his father's departure had been marked by a child's simplistic understanding of loss. Ethan would wait by the window on Sunday afternoons, convinced that each passing car might bring his father back. His mother had handled the situation with remarkable grace, never speaking ill of the man who had left them, yet never making excuses for his actions either. This measured approach had left Ethan with an unusual freedom to form his own conclusions about his father's character. As adolescence approached, anger replaced confusion. The hurt transformed into a driving force behind Ethan's music, fueling lyrics that spoke of betrayal and abandonment. Yet beneath the angry verses lay a deeper yearning for understanding. Why had his father chosen to leave? What circumstances or personal demons had driven him to abandon his family? These questions remained unanswered, creating a void that Ethan filled with music. The music industry's demanding nature had forced Ethan to confront these unresolved feelings about his father. Every contract negotiation, every business decision, required a level of trust that Ethan struggled to give. How could he fully trust others when the first man who should have earned his trust had walked away? This skepticism had served him well in some ways, making him more cautious and analytical in his professional dealings, but it had also created barriers in his personal relationships. The irony of following in his father's footsteps as a musician wasn't lost on Ethan. Music had been his father's escape route, the passion that had ultimately led him away from his family. Now, Ethan found himself immersed in the same world, though he had promised himself to navigate it differently. Could the very thing that had taken his father away become Ethan's means of understanding him? Recent events in the industry had brought these thoughts to the surface with renewed intensity. The cutthroat nature of the business, the constant pressure to perform, and the sacrifice of personal relationships for professional success. Had these same forces influenced his father's decisions? The pattern seemed eerily familiar, yet Ethan remained determined to break it. The impact of his father's absence extended beyond emotional scars. It had shaped Ethan's approach to responsibility, driving him to be meticulously reliable in his commitments. Every missed deadline or canceled appointment carried the weight of potential abandonment, pushing him to maintain an almost obsessive level of dependability. This trait had earned him respect in the industry, but at what personal cost? Time had gradually shifted Ethan's perspective from anger to a more nuanced understanding of human complexity. The black and white view of his father as simply the man who left had evolved into a more complicated picture. What role had circumstances played? What pressures and limitations had influenced his father's choices? These questions remained unanswered, but Ethan's ability to ask them represented a significant shift in his emotional maturity. The music industry's demanding nature had created numerous opportunities for Ethan to either repeat or reject his father's patterns. Each decision point presented a chance to choose a different path, to demonstrate that success in music didn't necessarily require the sacrifice of personal relationships. But was it truly possible to achieve balance in an industry that seemed to demand all or nothing? The legacy of his father's absence had become both a burden and a guide, influencing Ethan's decisions in ways both conscious and unconscious. How much of his drive for success was fueled by a desire to prove something to the man who had left? Would achievement in the industry somehow validate or invalidate his father's choices? These questions continued to shape Ethan's journey, adding layers of complexity to every professional and personal decision. The relationship between fathers and sons often defines the course of lives in unexpected ways. For Ethan, the absence of this relationship had created a powerful force that drove him forward while simultaneously pulling him back to unresolved questions from his past. Could understanding his father's choices help him navigate his own path through the music industry's treacherous waters? The aroma of freshly ground coffee beans and warm pastries filled the small corner cafe where Luis had begun meeting Daniel 3 times a week. What started as casual conversations over espresso evolved into something more meaningful, a front-row seat to Daniel's gradual transformation, from a man consumed by guilt to someone slowly learning to forgive himself. During their initial meetings, Daniel would arrive with slumped shoulders and dark circles under his eyes, ordering the strongest coffee available as if trying to jolt himself awake from a perpetual nightmare. His responses were monosyllabic, his gaze often fixed on the steam, rising from his cup rather than meeting Luis's eyes. But Luis, drawing from years of experience in counseling troubled youth, recognized the telltale signs of someone carrying a burden too heavy to bear alone. As weeks passed, subtle changes emerged in Daniel's demeanor. His choice of beverages shifted from bitter black coffee to more moderate options, perhaps reflecting the softening of his internal struggles. He began sharing fragments of his past, memories of Ethan's childhood, moments of joy that had been overshadowed by the weight of his subsequent choices. These revelations came slowly, like water dripping from a barely opened faucet, but each drop contributed to a growing pool of understanding. Luis noticed how Daniel's hands would tremble less when discussing difficult topics, how his voice grew steadier when speaking about his hopes for reconciliation with Ethan. The coffee shop became their sanctuary, a neutral ground where painful truths could be examined under the gentle hum of coffee grinders and distant conversations. What made these sessions different from traditional therapy was their organic nature. 2 men sharing experiences over coffee, one guiding the other towards self-discovery without the formal constraints of a counselor's office. The turning point came during their 15th meeting. Daniel arrived carrying a worn leather wallet, from which he carefully extracted a faded photograph. It showed a younger version of himself teaching a small boy, Ethan, how to ride a bicycle. The simple act of sharing this memory marked a significant shift in Daniel's journey. For the first time, he spoke about his past actions not with self-loathing, but with a measured understanding of human fallibility. Through these conversations, Luis learned about the complexity of Daniel's relationship with alcohol, how it had served as both escape and prison. Daniel described the moment he realized he needed help, not as a dramatic epiphany but as a quiet morning when he couldn't remember the sound of his son's laughter. This admission came without the usual undertone of self-flagellation. Instead, it carried the weight of honest reflection. The coffee shop sessions revealed another layer of Daniel's character, his capacity for growth. He began asking questions about addiction recovery programs, showing interest in formal support systems beyond their conversations. His inquiries were thoughtful and purposeful, indicating a mind moving from passive regret to active rehabilitation. Would this newfound determination be enough to bridge the gap between father and son? Luis observed how Daniel's perspective on fatherhood evolved during their talks. Initially, his views were binary. He saw himself either as the complete failure or desperately seeking redemption. Gradually, these rigid categories dissolved into a more nuanced understanding of parental responsibility and human imperfection. The conversation shifted from "I failed as a father" to "How can I be present for my son now?" The transformation manifested in practical ways too. Daniel began arriving at their meetings with notebooks filled with ideas for connecting with Ethan, plans for building a stable life, and strategies for maintaining sobriety. His eyes carried a different kind of intensity, not the desperate gleam of someone drowning in remorse, but the focused look of a man charting a course through difficult waters. These coffee shop sessions also revealed the power of consistent, non-judgmental support. Luis maintained his role as an active listener, offering guidance without directing, suggesting possibilities without imposing solutions. How many other parents, he wondered, carried similar burdens without having a space to unpack them? As their meetings continued, the cafe staff began recognizing them as regulars, unconsciously participating in this journey of recovery by maintaining their quiet corner table. The familiar environment helped Daniel lower his defenses, allowing for more profound discussions about responsibility, forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption. Could these conversations, taking place amidst the ordinary backdrop of a coffee shop, be the catalyst for extraordinary change? The true measure of Daniel's transformation wasn't in grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but in the subtle shifts of his daily choices. He spoke of establishing routines, of learning to sit with uncomfortable emotions without reaching for a bottle, of accepting that recovery was a journey rather than a destination. These changes, though invisible to casual observers, represented fundamental shifts in his approach to life and fatherhood. The subtle shifts in Daniel's demeanor became increasingly apparent as he methodically worked to reconstruct his self-assurance. His daily routines, once marked by hesitation and self-doubt, began to incorporate deliberate practices aimed at personal growth. The morning coffee shop visits with Luis evolved into strategic planning sessions, where Daniel articulated his goals with growing clarity and purpose. During these meetings, Daniel developed a systematic approach to addressing his professional challenges. He created detailed lists of his strengths and areas for improvement, analyzing each aspect of his work life with newfound objectivity. The process revealed patterns he hadn't previously recognized, how certain projects energized him while others depleted his confidence, and how specific interactions with colleagues either bolstered or diminished his sense of professional worth. Luis observed as Daniel implemented small but significant changes in his daily work habits. Rather than immediately accepting every request that came his way, Daniel learned to pause and evaluate each opportunity. He began setting boundaries with colleagues who had previously taken advantage of his accommodating nature, practicing phrases like, "I'll need to check my schedule," and "let me evaluate if I have the bandwidth for that." The transformation extended beyond the workplace. Daniel started attending industry meetups and professional development workshops, initially standing at the periphery, but gradually engaging in meaningful conversations with other attendees. These interactions, though sometimes uncomfortable, provided opportunities to practice his networking skills and expand his professional circle. Physical activity became another cornerstone of Daniel's confidence-building strategy. He joined a local gym, not with the primary goal of physical transformation, but to establish a tangible sense of progress and achievement. The measurable improvements in his strength and endurance translated into a more assured presence in other areas of his life. What began as a simple exercise routine evolved into a metaphor for his broader journey of personal growth. Daniel's relationship with technology underwent a significant shift as well. Instead of using his devices as shields in social situations, he began employing them as tools for learning and connection. He subscribed to industry newsletters, participated in online forums, and even started contributing his own insights to professional discussions. This digital engagement helped him develop a stronger voice and more defined professional identity. The process of rebuilding confidence revealed itself in unexpected ways. Daniel noticed changes in his posture, his speaking patterns, and even his choice of clothing. He began selecting outfits that reflected the professional image he wanted to project, understanding that external presentation often influences internal perception. These choices weren't about conforming to others' expectations, but about aligning his outer appearance with his growing inner confidence. Financial management became another area of focus. Daniel realized that his tendency to undervalue his work had created patterns of financial insecurity that undermined his confidence. He began tracking his expenses, setting clear financial goals, and most importantly, learning to negotiate better compensation for his services. This practical approach to financial well-being contributed significantly to his overall sense of security and self-worth. The journey wasn't linear, and Daniel encountered numerous setbacks along the way. There were days when old habits resurfaced, and self-doubt crept back in. However, these challenges no longer derailed his progress entirely. Instead, they became opportunities to practice resilience and self-compassion, skills that proved as valuable as any professional capability he developed. Luis noticed how Daniel's communication style evolved during their regular meetings. His friends' responses became more measured, his questions more incisive, and his observations more nuanced. The nervous energy that had previously characterized their interactions gradually gave way to a more grounded presence. Daniel began to listen more actively, offering thoughtful responses rather than rushing to fill silences with nervous chatter. The transformation extended to Daniel's creative work as well. His design projects began to reflect a stronger sense of conviction and personal style. Where he had once relied heavily on client feedback and market trends, he now trusted his instincts more readily, leading to more innovative and distinctive solutions. This creative confidence manifested in his willingness to present bolder concepts and defend his artistic choices with well-reasoned arguments. As Daniel's confidence grew, so did his ability to handle criticism constructively. Feedback sessions that once left him defensive and discouraged became opportunities for growth and refinement. He learned to separate critique of his work from personal judgment, maintaining his self-worth while remaining open to improvement. This balanced approach to criticism marked a significant milestone in his professional development. The cumulative effect of these changes began to attract attention from colleagues and clients alike. People responded differently to the more assured version of Daniel, often seeking his opinion on projects and inviting him to contribute to important discussions. These positive responses created a reinforcing cycle, where external validation supported and accelerated his internal growth. The culmination of Daniel's journey arrived on a pivotal evening at the Metropolitan Opera House, where decades of dedication, countless hours of practice, and recent personal transformation would face their ultimate challenge. The weight of expectation hung heavily as he prepared for a performance that would either validate his renewed approach to music or confirm his deepest fears about his abilities. What makes certain moments in life stand out as defining points of change? For Daniel, this performance represented more than just another night on stage. It marked the intersection of his past struggles and future possibilities. Having worked through months of self-doubt and technical refinement, he had reached a juncture where theory needed to transform into practice. The program for the evening included pieces that had once been sources of anxiety for Daniel, particularly Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in D major. This composition, with its notorious technical demands and emotional depth, had previously represented everything he feared about public performance. Now it would serve as the vehicle for demonstrating his evolution as an artist. In the moments before taking the stage, Daniel's preparation differed markedly from his previous routines. Instead of pacing nervously or running through passages, obsessively he remained still, centered and focused on his breathing. The technical mastery he had achieved through countless hours of practice now existed as muscle memory, allowing his mind to remain clear and present. As Daniel stepped onto the stage, the familiar surge of adrenaline coursed through his body. However, this time he channeled it differently, transforming nervous energy into focused intensity. The first notes of the concerto emerged from his violin, with a clarity and confidence that immediately captured the audience's attention. How could the same performer who once struggled with performance anxiety now command such presence? The technical passages that had once caused him such distress flowed naturally, each note finding its perfect place within the musical phrase. Daniel's bow moved across the strings with precision and grace, creating a sound that filled the concert hall with warmth and vitality. His fingers danced across the fingerboard with newfound freedom, executing complex runs and double stops with apparent ease. What truly distinguished this performance was not just technical proficiency, but the emotional connection Daniel established with the music. Years of focusing solely on technical perfection had often left his performances feeling clinical and detached. Now, his interpretation revealed deeper layers of musical understanding, allowing the audience to experience the full emotional spectrum of Tchaikovsky's masterwork. The second movement, traditionally a moment of relative calm, showcased Daniel's ability to maintain intensity through subtle expression. His vibrato, once a source of technical obsession, now served the music naturally, adding color and depth to each phrase. The connection between performer and instrument had evolved into something more profound, a genuine partnership in musical storytelling. As the final movement approached, Daniel entered territory that had previously filled him with dread. The technically demanding finale had often been the point where his confidence would waver. But on this night, something different emerged. How had months of psychological and technical work transformed his relationship with these challenging passages? The virtuosic displays that concluded the concerto emerged with both precision and passion. Daniel's bow control remained steady even through the most demanding sequences, while his left hand executed the rapid passages with remarkable accuracy. The music flowed through him with an organic quality that belied the technical complexity of what he was achieving. Throughout the performance, Daniel maintained a presence that commanded attention without seeking it. His body language reflected the natural flow of the music, rather than the rigid control he had previously exhibited. This physical freedom translated directly into the sound he produced, creating a performance that felt both polished and spontaneously alive. The final notes of the concerto resonated through the hall with crystalline clarity. In that moment of silence before the applause began, Daniel experienced a profound sense of accomplishment, not because the performance had been technically perfect, but because he had finally achieved the musical freedom he had long sought. The audience's response confirmed what he already knew. This performance marked a fundamental shift in his artistic journey. The significance of this evening extended beyond the immediate success of the performance. It represented the integration of technical mastery with emotional authenticity, proving that the two need not be mutually exclusive. Daniel had discovered that true artistry emerges when technical foundation serves as a platform for genuine musical expression rather than an end in itself. What would this breakthrough mean for Daniel's future as a performer? The answer lay not just in the technical achievements of this single performance, but in the fundamental shift in his approach to music and performance. He had discovered that genuine artistic expression requires both mastery and vulnerability, technical precision and emotional openness. The aftermath of Daniel's groundbreaking performance reverberated through the halls of the Berklee College of Music, creating ripples that would transform not only his future but the institution's approach to neurodivergent students. The morning following his performance, Dean Roberts called an emergency faculty meeting, where the discussion centered on implementing comprehensive changes to accommodate students with different learning styles and cognitive processes. Daniel's success challenged long-held assumptions about traditional teaching methods and musical education. His unique approach to composition, which merged mathematical precision with emotional depth, demonstrated that alternative perspectives could enhance rather than hinder artistic expression. The faculty began developing new curriculum guidelines that incorporated multiple learning pathways, acknowledging that talent manifests in various forms. The impact extended beyond Berklee's walls as other music schools reached out to learn more about Daniel's journey. His story became a catalyst for change in music education, prompting institutions nationwide to reassess their admission criteria and teaching methodologies. What started as one student's struggle evolved into a movement that questioned the conventional wisdom about musical genius and ability. Professor Martinez, who had initially doubted Daniel's capabilities, became one of the strongest advocates for educational reform. She established a mentorship program specifically designed for neurodivergent students, using her experience with Daniel to create a supportive framework that celebrated different cognitive styles. The program would later become a model for other departments and institutions. Daniel's relationship with his fellow students underwent a remarkable transformation. Those who had once viewed his differences with skepticism now sought his insight, particularly in understanding the mathematical underpinnings of musical composition. Study groups formed organically around him, creating an environment where diverse perspectives enriched everyone's learning experience. The recording industry took notice of Daniel's innovative approach to music composition. Several prestigious labels expressed interest in his work, recognizing the unique blend of technical precision and emotional resonance in his pieces. However, Daniel's focus remained on completing his education and developing his skills further, understanding that his journey was about more than individual success. Sarah continued to play a crucial role in Daniel's life, but their relationship evolved beyond the traditional boundaries of mentor and student. They began collaborating on research projects exploring the intersection of mathematics and music, their work contributing to a growing body of literature on alternative approaches to musical composition and education. The conservatory's physical space underwent changes as well. New practice rooms were equipped with technology that accommodated different learning styles, and quiet spaces were designated for students who needed sensory breaks. These modifications, inspired by Daniel's experience, created an environment where all students could thrive regardless of their neurological makeup. Daniel's parents, who had once worried about their son's future, watched with pride as he flourished in an environment that finally understood and appreciated his gifts. Their advocacy for neurodivergent students became stronger, and they worked with Berklee to establish a scholarship fund for students who approached music from unconventional perspectives. The academic community began conducting research into the relationship between neurodiversity and musical ability, with Daniel's case study serving as a cornerstone. Publications in prestigious music education journals highlighted the potential benefits of embracing diverse cognitive styles in artistic development, challenging traditional notions of talent and capability. As graduation approached, Daniel found himself at the center of a transformation he had never anticipated. His journey from an outsider struggling to fit into conventional educational molds to a catalyst for institutional change demonstrated the power of perseverance and authenticity. The music world was beginning to understand that different ways of thinking could lead to extraordinary creative achievements. The future held numerous possibilities for Daniel and the educational landscape he had helped reshape. Music schools across the country started implementing programs that recognized and supported neurodivergent students, creating opportunities for talented individuals who might have previously been overlooked. The conversation about inclusion in music education had fundamentally shifted, with Daniel's story serving as a testament to the importance of embracing diverse perspectives in artistic expression. What began as one student's challenge to traditional educational norms evolved into a broader movement for change in music education. Daniel's experience proved that when institutions adapt to support different ways of learning and creating, everyone benefits. The new beginning at Berklee represented not just a personal triumph, but a fundamental shift in how the music world understood and nurtured talent in all its forms. Up next, we have two more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.